Well, here we are at the end of the 2020 harvest, and what a challenging year it has been. It's been a season that probably stands out for being one of the most unusual, certainly in my 30 years since I've been back home, and a season that started very early. We had the earliest bud burst that I remember, which started on the 3rd of March, and as a result of an extremely hot February. February was hot and dry, which brought on the season much earlier than normal. We then came on to our spring. Spring was quite damp, and although the humidity was welcome, it did make it quite a challenge to overcome both initially our downy mildew and then closer to June, the powdery mildew, which with the humid, warm conditions was quite a challenge to overcome. Then all of a sudden, around the 22nd of June, we had a very dramatic change in our weather conditions. And we have in Portugal, we have the St. John's Festival, São João, and there's a traditional saying here which we call the Queima de São João, which is the scorching of São João. And that happened this year as a result of extremely hot weather, which changed overnight. We had days in 40 degrees centigrade with very, very low relative humidity. And that was to set what was to be the hottest July that we've recorded with any Portuguese weather station. And since records began back in 1938, July was extremely hot, both the day temperatures, but also the night temperatures. The minimum temperatures rarely drop below 20 degrees centigrade. And so what was already a very early start to the season was pushed forward by this extremely hot July, which caused a considerable amount of sunburn in some of our grape varieties, and namely Tinta Barroca being the one that suffered the most, but it was not the only one. When in August we arrived to look at the ripening of the grapes and how they were faring for the start of the harvest, we were very happy with what we saw. Although it was quite evident that we didn't have a lot of grapes on our vines, the August had been actually quite mild, and we started preparing for what we knew was going to be an early harvest. But all of a sudden, in the last week of August, we had another heat wave, and that precipitated the ripening of all of the grapes in the region. It was as if all of a sudden the vineyards from the lower level vineyards right up to the higher altitude vineyards became ripe in one go. And so there became a rush to pick the grapes to bring everything in. There was one variety that was concerning us in particular. Touriga Francesa was shriveling. It was shriveling tremendously. But in contrast, the Tinto Cão grape variety behaved absolutely magnificently. Tinto Cão is one of our oldest grape varieties, and it's a variety that thrives in the very hot, arid conditions of the Douro, and particularly in dry, hot years like this. And the berries maintained perfectly intact, and we were very happy with its ripening. Picking started on our quintas on the 3rd of September, and what stands out from the 2020 harvest were the extremely high sugar levels in the grapes. So the low yields, the hot conditions at the end of August has resulted in a lot of berry shrivel. And what we have is not only grapes with a very, very high sugar level, but also a lot of concentration. So the pods that we have made this harvest have already shown that they got a lot of color, a lot of structure, and because we had very high initial sugar, the fermentations went on for a long time, allowing us to make good extraction of the skins. Here we are in one of the wineries, which sadly was one of the victims of the 2020 harvest, and for obvious reasons, we did not do any foot treading. But if there was a year that this was to happen, well, at least it was this year, because the very high sugar levels gave us very long fermentations, and that allowed us to compensate in the other winemaking methods to give the extraction that we wanted. So the ports that we have made from the 2020 harvest stand out for their intensity of colour. One of the good aspects that I've seen in these ports this harvest is that although the grapes are shriveled, we're not seeing any overripe characters. They're certainly very big, very dense, and I look forward to evaluating them in January and February. But there are ports which I am very happy with. Inevitably, some ports have got less of a balance, but that's what you get in the year's extreme as such. Therefore, I look forward to evaluating their quality in the spring.